Hey there, this is Henry Fernandez, and welcome to another podcast. I am so grateful that you have joined me on this platform. Remember, this platform is a platform for people who are seeking for answers, hope. Maybe somehow you feel as if, you don't fit in. Well, we're here for you today. I have some of the most amazing women who are joining me today as we talk about, women being successful in business, yet their success did not just come or happen without them, fighting for it, against all odds. These women were forward thinkers, they have their own stories to tell of their failures and their setbacks and so forth. So do me a favor. I want you to pass this information on, this podcast. Tell somebody about it. Tell them to go to my platform to watch and listen to it, because I believe it will empower them. Not only that, please leave a comment. Tell me that you liked it, somehow you got something out of it and it was a blessing to you. All right, so let me introduce these ladies. They've been waiting patiently. First, Shawn Sanders, who I've known for several years. She's living in Georgia now, former member of the Faith Center, an international money coach. We need her. Inspirational speaker, author, and entrepreneur with over 23 years in business management in the areas of pharmaceutical research and real estate investment. That's a lot, of accomplishment. And I mean, and she did it. She owned this. She earned it. Some people buy their successes. She earned hers. Dr. Heather Thompson, again, another member of our church, a licensed clinical social worker with a PhD in marriage and family therapy. We need her. Lord knows we need her in this pandemic. And I wish she would get her own show, because people are depressed. Marriages are failing. People are hurting. And her gift, to have a PhD, you got to be smart. I can't even get a diploma, but she got a PhD. She's a smart woman. Mila Risen, hopefully I said it right, because I got it before we came on live. She is a partner with the international law firm of K&L Gates. Her specialty is in health law. And given this pandemic, the virus, and how the medical community is suffering a lot, I'm quite sure she is inundated with a lot of work. So hello, Shawn. Hello, Heather. And hello, Mila. How are you guys doing today?
Super fine, Bishop. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. I am really excited about you women coming on today. And as you know, you women, you have been successful. I got to stop for a moment and say, congratulations. We are very proud of you. I find that society is so quick to criticize. Here it is. You've got 3 successful women from all walks of life. And I'm quite sure you all can tell stories of how you've been attacked, criticized. And sometimes I think it's because people tend to lean to the negative than the positive. Women, let's start out with this. The 21st century has produced more women who are successful in business, women who have achieved great academic success, who are forced, by the way, to be single parents. They're handling single parenting in a way like no other generation. Yet, even with all of the struggles, somehow women are, climbing the ladder of success, and that we cannot deny. All right, let's start out with this. I'm a man, so I'm not in your world, ladies. Other women are listening right now. What are the struggles that are common among women? What do you all go through? Talk to me.
I'm happy to go first on my end. One of the biggest struggles that I've had is juggling working and being a single mom. It has been really one of the biggest challenges that I've had, because for so many years it was just work, and that was okay. The focus was on me and work, and that's not okay when you have a child and you have to balance it. And I think even this year with COVID has been such a challenge. And I think the biggest part that's a challenge is I don't think so many people appreciate how hard it is for women to run the house. They run it alone, but they do a lot in the house. And then they also take care of the kids. And then they also, I know in my profession, it's based on how many hours you log and revenue. And it's been a challenging time juggling all of that.
Now, Sean, you are kind of in the same situation as Mila. You know, you've got, your youngest daughter. Of course, you have the son. But again, with doing all of what you do, has it been difficult doing business and raising a child at the same time?
Absolutely. It was, it was one of the biggest challenges that I had, was trying to find that balance between being parent and then being that businesswoman who needed to go out there and attend social events to, build contracts and contacts. And they say your wealth is the extent of your Rolodex at the time, So I had to find a way to balance being home as a mother, doing homework and making sure, the house was taken care of, but also trying to get out there and be this businesswoman that was trying to build a company from scratch. It's interesting that we're doing this broadcast this week, because this week makes 20 years I've been on my own as a self-employed individual. And I can tell you that in addition to balancing parenting, one of the greatest challenges I had initially when I started my business back in 2001 as a woman in the pharmaceutical industry, and being a Black woman, but being a woman who was about 300 and some pounds, I was really, really very big. And so getting people to take me serious, that I knew what I was doing and that I was qualified to do this, was a very, very big challenge. And so I had to employ, avenues and tactics in order to be able to manipulate and move and swim through this ocean that I was placed in. And that was my big challenge. Overcoming what people saw when they looked at me and getting them to understand that what was in my head may not really match what you think I'm capable of doing, but give me a shot. So I started going by a motto which says, under promise and over deliver. And that worked very well. That's kept me in business for 20 years.
Dr. Thompson, I think this is where we need your expertise, because we have two women who just talked about, the challenges that they face in being a businesswoman and at the same time trying to be a parent. There are many women watching right now, listening, who can identify with them. They don't have a man in their life, no husband, no fiance. Some of them, I'm quite sure these ladies can agree, are struggling with baggages of their past. And with all of that, how do we, or how do women, Dr. Thompson, deal with pandemic, the attacks that's coming at them, people not taking them serious? As people say, it's a man's world. I think that was James Brown. It's a man's world. And these women are saying, no, it's a woman's world too. What can you say to them?
And what I hear Sean talking about, and Bishop, what you're also referring to is blatant sexism that we have to deal with in the world. We're also talking about the way in which you have a significant role strain in many ways, that we take on so many different roles. Like we've identified mother and businesswoman, but there's many other roles that we take on. A lot of us are caregivers, we're daughters, we're friends, we're sisters. I'm a wife. I'm also a stepmother. There's so many different roles that women take on. And with each and every one, we feel like we have to be the best at each and every one, because if for some reason we are not the best at it, we are oftentimes questioned and accused in other areas. Oh, well, she wasn't able to do this because she has children, or she wasn't able to handle that negotiation well because she's a woman and she's emotional. And so these are different things that we have to wrestle with, and we have to figure out how we are able to do them successfully while also not burning ourselves out. Because what we also see is that we oftentimes are our biggest critic, that we have to give ourselves some grace in those situations. So it's a real struggle that we have to go through, but we also have to find that balance in saying, it is okay to not be perfect, but it's okay to be myself in those roles that I'm working in.
Don't you think that women sometimes shortchange themselves trying to measure up to the expectation of society, and that's the frustrating part of their lives?
Absolutely. We have this idea of what the perfect woman should be like, what the perfect wife should be like, what the perfect worker should be like. We all see these images in social media of what perfection is. And in reality, that's a facade. Most individuals, when they desire attention, they are either showing the worst side of themselves or the best side. But the reality is that most of us are pretty much in the middle, that we do some things good and we do some things okay. And then there's things that, we are just a little bit imperfect at. And that is okay. And so this idea of having a realistic view of what you are capable of and what is okay and good enough is really essential to our mental health.
So for the women out there who are watching and listening, it's okay if you don't have a man in your life. It's okay if you're not married, because, society will make women, and there are women who can agree with me on this. It's like if they're not married by a certain age, or, and as you mentioned, social media, it has its strength, but my goodness, it can be detrimental to a person's emotions and self-esteem, don't you think?
Absolutely. Again, it's this comparison of this facade that you see of other people. Because again, you're only seeing what individuals want you to see. You're not seeing the true full picture. And so absolutely, you see it where we have to really focus on what our own story is. As a therapist, I often do a practice in which I have individuals tell me their story, what their life story is. And then I start to break down all the different ways that dominant society, media, other people's expectations have influenced our story. And we start to unpackage that and look at, what is the story that you really have for yourself? What are the strengths that you are able to identify? And what are you able to be proud of to rewrite your own story and really have that dominant, clear story of your true life come forward?
I love that. Let's talk about rewriting your own story, but let's look at the story part first. I'm going to ask Sean and Mila this. Let me start with Mila. Was there a time in your life where you felt you were going through whatever as a woman, the pressure, your back was against the wall, and you had to say to yourself, Mila, you have to survive. You have to stay alive. You have to win. Failure is not an option.
Yeah, I think that happens way more than when you said is for a time in your life. I think that happens a lot to us. And I think that particularly the pandemic really has pushed me. It really has pushed me because I'm a single mom to a 4-year-old. She's not in school. And so there's plenty of days that I get up at 4, work till 8, take care of her. Then I work from 12 till 6, then 6 till 9, I'm with her, and then I'm working again. And so that is a schedule that I've kept for almost a year. And there's a couple times that I have a man in the office, and I'm not knocking men because I think there's a lot of very good male people. So this is not a knock negative on men, but he said to me one month where she was nearly hospitalized, Mila, your hours were down this month. Is there a reason for that?
Wow.
And I was thinking, well, I already told you I was going to be out of pocket for 3 days because I was going to be in Miami Children's with my daughter. So you kind of know that there's something going on. So there's a lack of sensitivity. But I think that the idea of the survival, I mean, I think this year has pushed a lot of us who have young kids there because it's made us physically do things that we would have I never thought I could do. And, I'm functioning and I'm moving on, whatever hours of sleep constantly and continuing to do things that I want to do outside of the legal profession. But I think that that happens more than you think. I think people are smiling and going along, but we're pushed a lot right now.
Sean, jump in right here.
I'm listening to her and I'm listening to Dr. Thompson, and I'm hearing so much of myself. When I've been knocked down many times, many times, and I was all in the survival mode. And then I went to what I call a thriving mode. And like Dr. Thompson said, the pressure is on you to be perfect in all of these different areas, in all the roles that you play. You want to be the best of yourself to all of these people. And yes, when I've been knocked down, I've been put in a place where I felt like I needed to, what I found in the middle of all of this survival was that my creativity woke up. And once my creativity woke up where I said, you know what, I'm not going down like this. I'm just not, no, this is not going to be my story. I'm not going to be someone who started out well and failed and all that. That's not going to be my story. And then my creativity became alive when I began to realize that I needed to know who Sean was for Sean and who Sean the physical person was, but also who Sean the spiritual person was. And so once I began to understand who I am and what my purpose was and what I was created for, my ability to thrive began to kick up. And so in that creativity, I learned over the years that 1 + 1 does not necessarily mean 2. I can 1 + 1 and I can turn that to nearly 4, and I could push it and get a 4 through creativity and the addition of a decimal. So if I add the decimal and made a 1.5, 1.6, 1.9, I am closer to a 4 than I am to a 2. And so I began to try to figure out, okay, how do I make this one situation, this one thing that I have, multiply and become something greater? And so creativity came in, and I realized that in my survival mode, I didn't understand who I was. But when I understood who I was and what I needed to do, I began to thrive. And so the way I survived all of these years was I started to forget about trying to survive and say, how can I be the best, even if I'm on the ground, flat on the ground? What can I do while I'm down here that is going to make me feel better about myself, but also help me to get back up again? And that's the one message that I feel a lot of women especially, have such an amazing ability to turn every situation around. You hear Miley saying how she's taking care of a 4-year-old and how she gets up earlier and she takes care of the child and she works and she takes care of the child. And I've done that. And that's because that's how women are. We find a way through our situation, our circumstance, to reinvent ourselves so that the best of us always seem to come forth. The woman who now starts to feel hopeless is the one who starts trying to figure out, who am I? What's going to happen? And so when you get rid of that part, then now you can come alive and let that creativity wake up and expand.
There are many women, like I said, who are watching and listening right now. And as you are getting this information, if you're connecting with what we're saying, go ahead and make your comments, even share your own feelings and, your experiences that you've had. Because this is such a great discussion today, and we need to hear from you. So all you have to do, go in the comment section and let me know that you are listening. Also, please share this with someone. Let someone know that we've had this discussion and it's pertaining to women. So let me go back to the three of you, and any one of you can jump in here. Thank God, all three of you, you're successful. with your education and your career. That's wonderful. You made it out alive and sane. What about these women who are in the same situation, multiple children? Listen to this. I'm calling out their issues, real life issues, multiple children, sometimes dealing with multiple men, a breakup, an absentee father, abusive husband, minimum wage, not much funding to take care of her basic obligations, the pandemic, dealing with kids' emotions throughout this pandemic. She's feeling drained, hopeless. You've been there. How could you encourage her to get out of that situation and trust God, kick into survival mode and keep going, keep thriving? Because again, there's a lot of women. It's not that, they're not intelligent. There's so many intelligent women out there. It's just that sometimes, and maybe Dr. Thompson, one of the things I find, because, I am good at human psychology. And what I'm finding, and not just women, men too, but since we're talking about women, sometimes, there is a psychological effect on women's minds and their emotions when they are swamped with a lot. Don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, naturally, when we are pushed in many different directions, even if you think about, any sort of object, if you keep pushing it and pulling on it in different directions, it's going to break at some point. And while all of us on this call were identified as survivors and successful, the reality is that each and every one of us have been through different situations. I think what might differentiate those who identify as successful or survivors is the mentality that we have to keep going. And you have to find an inspiration. What is it that inspires you to keep going? Is it your children? Is it a circumstance that you have been through? Is it a desire, an inherent desire to be better? But what is your inspiration? And what tells you that you don't have an option to stop, that you don't have an option to quit? One of the things that I talk about with my clients, because I work with a lot of clients who have been traumatized, that have been through some horrific situations. When I was a case manager, I was working in the foster care system. And so you can only imagine the stories that I have heard, the situations that young people have gone through. And oftentimes you see a cycle of abuse where individuals who have been victimized as children are also victimized again as adults. And it's this repeating cycle. But what we oftentimes focus on is not this victim mentality, but that survivor mentality, and focused on the times in which you have overcome in the past. Because the reality is each one of us have been through situations, and we have within ourselves that ability to keep going. So we need to focus on how have you gotten through this in the past, and how can we tap into that and use it in this situation again. So again, focusing on the ways in which you've been successful in the past, even though it may not feel like it, and really hone in on that and use that to drive you.
Okay. Who else wanted to tap in on that?
Well, Bishop, what I'd like to say is, for me, it always came down to perception versus perspective. What I perceived is my situation that eventually caused me to end up in this situation. So it's usually built around a belief system for me. Most of my crashes, I can't speak for everyone, but when I've had my situations where I've fallen flat on my face or I hit a wall, it was because something in the way I was focusing, whatever I perceived to be the right thing, and then hitting that wall, I realized that my perception was wrong because that perception changed my perspective. And so my perspective being twisted caused me to hit a wall. But what I found when I hit the wall was that I compared myself mostly to like a tennis ball. If you throw the tennis ball and it hits the wall, the tennis ball will bounce off the wall, but it does not go back in the same direction that it came from. Instead, it pivots in another direction. And so as I'm there trying to figure out what in the world just went wrong in my life, how did this just happen? I'm also in the process of doing something what I call changing my paradigm or changing my belief system, changing that perception, because now I realize that if I can use this pivot, when I hit the wall and when I bounce back, I'm going in a totally different trajectory that is supposed to shift the direction of my life and how things are going to happen. So what I found with a lot of women that I've counseled is that what the foundation, their perception, their perspective, what they were believing, some women build their lives around a relationship. They would move to a city because of them being in love with this man. And then the relationship falls apart and they build this world that's circled around the man. The relationship falls apart. And then all of a sudden she have no perspective. She have no purpose. She don't know what she should be doing with herself.
But isn't that what society has taught us, that the goal for a woman is to, from an early age, play with dolls and, have this concept of meeting this wonderful guy, get engaged, get married, have kids, live happily ever after. So isn't that the goal? And if that's the goal, women are following it. But when it doesn't work, like you said, if that's what they wanted, what's the problem? Or should we then, you ladies now, train these women now to think in a different way, have a different perspective on how women were trained? Are you understand what I'm saying?
Yes. What I would say, Bishop, is I was raised by a single mother. And my mother never trained me that a man was my ultimate goal. She trained me that I was to be an educated woman. I was to find out what was my destiny in life, my purpose, and pursue it. And that in the pursuit of me becoming who I'm supposed to be, all of the other things would be added. So I never was raised believing that I had to have a man in my life in order for me to feel complete. So, well, here's the thing. It doesn't mean I've not made mistakes in relationships. I've dated, I've made mistakes, and they all fell apart. Yes. But I come back to this perception versus perspective. If I perceive that man to be part of who I needed to make me complete, then when that passion exited, of course, I would feel the void of feeling incomplete. So I'm hitting the wall. I need to pivot because that obviously was a wrong perspective. And I have to re-examine my thoughts. This is why a lot of women are unhappy today, because a lot of them have been trained, especially in the culture, in the culture that I grew up in. My mom was a total trendsetter for what she thought. But we were taught that you were supposed to marry, have kids, and this is society now, the culture. And so when women don't experience this, they feel unfulfilled. Right. I have women right now who are counseling over this issue, and therefore, and you cannot get them to understand. You have to know who you are first, know what you're supposed to be doing with your life, and then you know who belong in it and who do not belong in it. It's the hardest thing to do. It's a mental shift, a mental paradigm. It's a paradigm shift that has to take place. And I think one of the things that we need to focus on sometimes is that we are spirit beings living in a physical body. And until you understand the spiritual aspect of who you are, the psychological aspect, Dr. Thompson speaks about these things. When you understand psychologically who you are, and my master's degree is in psych mental health, which is very interesting. But when you begin to understand who you are and that I was created with a purpose, now there's a value that's placed on who you. So everybody can't experience my birth. And so a lot of women have undervalued themselves. Yes, because society has placed us in these shifts, especially within the church, Bishop. The church is one of the biggest proponents.
We're going to talk about that in a minute.
Okay. But me, using my life as an example, I don't feel that I am incomplete because I don't have this or I don't have that. What I realize is that I don't have it yet. And if I have something else that I'm doing, but everything else will come. And for me, it's always, I don't have it, not yet. Yet is a very powerful word because it means it's coming. It just hasn't arrived. So I'm always positive. I'm always hopeful. I'm always optimistic about everything that's going on.
Right.
If that goes with you.
Now, Sean, you talked about your mom. Your mom was the person who influenced you to believe in yourself and so forth. Let's talk a little bit about the sisterhood club, I call it. You had a woman in your life, your mom, Mila. I don't know who was in your life as a female who mentored you, and so it is also Dr. Thompson. But here's the big question, because I think I'm asking some questions based on women right now who are listening and so forth. A lot of times women don't trust other women. They're insecure, intimidated by other women. I believe the sister club is so powerful. When women come together for the right cause, so powerful. So here's the question. Why do you find women avoiding the strong, powerful sisterhood club, if you will, and do other things that cause women to be at odds against themselves?
Bishop, I think I can speak to this a little bit, both from a personal standpoint and also from a professional standpoint. I can say, I was raised in a household where I had my mother and my father, and I saw some, and, oftentimes we hear, growing up in a single parent household, that has certain factors that make it a little bit more challenging. But, in some ways that might be true, but we see challenges in every family system and in every family structure. And so it's important to think about the way in which our family system influences the way in which we see the world. I can say growing up, I had a mother who was a wonderful mother, wanted to do the best for her children, but she had a unique family system where she was in a family with 4 other girls. And I have to say that I saw some behaviors that to me really concerned me even as a young child. I learned as a young child that I did not want to have that experience of the competition, the cattiness, the talking about someone nicely to their face and then, saying something behind their back to someone else. Like, it terrified me as a young child. Like, even as like a 8 to 10-year-old, I would remember when certain family members would come over, I'm like, I'm going to go in my room and play because I don't want to hear that. I don't want to be exposed to that. So growing up as a teenager, through young adulthood, I was very cautious about women. I was like, I'll just kind of stay by myself. Like, I'll just kind of do my own thing. And it wasn't until probably maybe my mid to late 20s when I finally had this opportunity to be around women that were supportive and would celebrate me. And I'm not going to lie. At first I was concerned. I was like, what are they at? Like, why are they empowered? Why are they celebrating me? Why are they complimenting me? Like, I was like, what do they want? Like, what do they want in me? And so we really have to, going back to what Sean said, is really change our perception of situations and also work collectively and say, we have to choose to empower each other and celebrate each other. Like, that's really what it is, that when Sean wins, when Mila wins, I win too. Like, and that's a wonderful thing, that when my peers are winning, I as a woman am also winning. So again, I think it's, it's important to think about how we saw these experiences of the sisterhood club, and in what way does that kind of shape the way in which we live our lives? Wow.
Okay. Mila?
Yeah, I have always really appreciated and enjoyed relationships with women in terms of, I think that they're so critical to other women. It is that on so many levels. And so I've never been one to have 1,000 friends, but I've been one to have a few close ones that I can truly trust. And trust and loyalty are a big deal, because if you really want to have an in-depth, healthy relationship with someone, you really need to have the trust factor. So I think having someone, and particularly single women who go through so many issues, having someone that you can have in your life, another, core group or whatever it is of other women, that you can run stuff by and think through. And even right now, I love the fact that a lot of my friends are spiritual too. Which is a big deal because, it's not just the natural, it's the spiritual. And when I'm low, they kick in, remember this, Psalm 23 or whatever they're saying back to me. So I think it's really important. I do know there's so much cattiness with women. And the two mental health experts on the call are way more sophisticated than me to analyze why, but it does seem to happen. It happens in work environments. It happens personally. It happens all over. But I think putting all of it aside, I think it's so critical to really find a core group of women in your life that you can rely on.
Okay, Sean, jump in here.
As Bishop, I'm going to tell you, I was just like the both of them. I was very skittish of being part of sisterhood groups and trusting and confiding in women because I've been burned so many times. And so what I found was that I would be the source of strength and support for other people because I trusted myself with their story. I trusted myself with their situation, but I didn't trust that they would not turn on me if they saw my weaknesses and they saw my inadequacies. And so what I would do then is I would find women who were stronger than me, who were wiser than I was, who I could trust. And then I confided in a woman who was more accomplished, who was comfortable with where she had gone. And that's what I found myself doing because it was a constant back and forth of trying to defend myself of being misunderstood. And because the language that we were speaking weren't matching up, and because, when you're, like we say, trying to juggle so many hats, you're not conscious that, okay, I'm speaking to this person, so now I changed my language a little bit. And, the other day I was talking to my daughter in the car, and we were talking about the word buck. And she's telling this kid in her 8th grade class that she bucked her toe against the desk. And so that's a Bahamian term to say that you hit something. The American term bucking is not the same thing. And so when you're now trying to be this successful person, you kind of have to wait. Do I really want to be concerned about using the word buck or bump my toe? I mean, you have to think about this depending on what culture you're talking to. It's so many different things you have to take into account. And I said, you know what? You tell me your problem, I'll help you. And let me find somebody who I can be myself with. And I'm going to confide in them. So that brought me to a very narrow group of people that I would trust and confide in. And I do believe in the sisterhood. I do believe in it. I've not fully been totally involved in that, Bishop, because like I said, the challenges, and I'm busy. I don't want to go and figure out, okay, what country did you come from? Okay, so this word means this and that. Because I got so much flack for it that I needed a class of cultural diversity to make sure that I was culturally appropriate. And so it becomes a stress. So like I said, I would be the source of strength for some, like my group. The people that I talk to, the people I ask for counsel, people who I know are comfortable with who they are and will allow me to be me.
Okay. So we got time for just 2 more questions. This is very good. Listen, if you're listening and watching this podcast, I need to hear from you. Give me your comments. I'm telling you, this is amazing. I believe women are being empowered right now as these 3 women are sharing, their life stories, their feelings, their passions, and their wisdom to you ladies. So share this platform with someone. Now, in our country, as you know, our country is so divided right now. Politics, I think it was Dr. Thompson mentioned it, sexism, racism, you name it. And more than ever before, more women are in politics now than before, women in business. So many things are happening right now. What's the response women should be given to all of this, the changes that's taking place? Let's put it this way, if you, each of you, had the opportunity to stand before 1 million women in this country to give them hope in this craziness of what's happening in our world, what would that message be, in particular to women? What would that message be? Okay, let me start with you, Dr. Thompson.
Well, if I had to speak to a large group of women and say, what do we bring to this world, particularly what we're dealing with right now, is oftentimes people identify women as being emotional as if that is a negative thing. But in reality, you want to think about the ways in which that can actually be very powerful. When you talk about someone being emotional, that means that they are tapped into their feelings. So they're not just stuck here cognitively, because trust me, I very much value what happens cognitively. I have a PhD, I do research. I very much appreciate people's thought patterns, but there's value in being able to tap into someone's vulnerability. As I believe it was Mila described earlier, having individuals who can be sensitive to the experiences of the world. We're not machines. We are not individuals that can just keep going and keep producing and not be impacted in some sort of way. So I think one of the powerful things that women bring is the fact that we can tap into that. Vulnerability is not a weakness. In fact, being vulnerable is one of the greatest strengths that we have, that we can tap into that, recognize it, have compassion for other individuals, and use that to build them up and strengthen them and encourage them to keep persevering. So that's something that I think we can definitely bring to the world that we're in right now.
Sean?
I want to say that I think when it comes to women, the whole concept, I want to deal with it from the perspective of the church. The church is really, as bad as it is of women in the secular world, the church is also further behind in that. And it has really not allowed a lot of women to be what they could be and should be. And, even as women, as ministers, I get flack coming back at me, oh, you're a woman, you shouldn't be talking about such things. But I will encourage women today, and I want to say to them, there are some women from the Bible I just want to mention briefly, Bishop. I have it written here. And I always say, when God wanted to save a king, he used Abigail to speak to David to save him from doing something that was wrong. When God wanted to save a kingdom, he used Bathsheba to go and bring the prophet to secure the throne for Solomon. When God wanted to save people, when he took Deborah, who said to Barak, I'll ride into battle with you, and to secure the battle, the people. And when God wanted to keep custom, he used the prophetess Huldah. These were all women from the Bible. But here are the two very important women I want to bring up. When God wanted to save a race, when he wanted to save the Israelites from Haman in the book of Esther, he used Esther. He caused the king to divorce Vashti, brought Esther in, used Esther to save a race of people. And then when God, here's the clincher, when God wanted to save the world, what did he do? He used Mary. These were all pivotal moments in the history of Judaism and Christianity that has shaped the world as we know it, and Christianity. And I would say this to every woman: you are a woman. Yes, you are the womb through whom every person becomes man, male or female.
Wow.
So how then can you be an inferior being when you are the womb through whom God brought even the Savior into the world? Society has taught us this. The church has indoctrinated it, but it has no place in the Word of God. We see biblically that God has used women over and over again to change the world. And when we come into the mindset that, yes, there is a place for the woman to be the leader that God has created her to be, then we can now move forward more, so much more. Because like Dr. Thompson said, we have this unique ability to be vulnerable. We can feel people's pain, and we can embrace the pain with one hand and bring a whole bundle of joy with that at the same time, and still baby on breast. When Hurricane Dorian hit, there was a picture that was circulating of this woman who was serving. She had one child, she's holding a bottle in this hand and the next baby in her hand, and she had the bottle propped up like this, but she's feeding one baby like this, and the other baby, she has the bottle like this. She's feeding two kids at the same time. That's how phenomenal women are. And to minimize a woman and to not allow her to be her full self is only robbing not only our immediate environment, robbing the world of what could happen should that paradigm shift.
Wow. Mila?
Yeah, I thought that was amazing. It was just I know you're asking me, but if I could spend 1 second commenting on your words, Minister, because that was just amazing. And it was amazing for you to just be able to share that, because I know it touched me as you were talking. So, so thank you for all of that, because in my mind, I was thinking about all the heroes in the Bible. And as I was talking, you were just going on and on about them. So it was just wonderful. I think I had kind of 3 thoughts in terms of what I would impart to women, which is, one, your audience is not, society. And I always say this to myself when I walk into a room and I'm intimidated by all the people in the room and thinking, okay, what's this person thinking? What's this person saying? It's at the end of the day, the audience is really God. And I say to myself, to my friends, everything is that, who's your audience? And that's the word that's always in corporate America. Who's your audience? Who's this? Who are you trying to do? Da, 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 da. And at the end of the day, who is your audience? God. So once you think like that your audience is God, God wants you to succeed. God, you're not alone in where you are. God wants you to be happy. God wants to provide for you. Once you start thinking like that, it's a whole different mentality. And then I think just taking on what Minister Sean said earlier about, if you look at these powerful women in the Bible, they were used in so many different ways. So women, just like men, have so many assets, have so many ways to be used. And whether or not, you're this or that, or, young, old, black, white, this, that, your God has you on this earth for a purpose. And as long as you're serving his purpose, he's going to continue to help you along. So I think that would be the message I would kind of want to convey.
Well, wow. We're running out of time. Unbelievable. I think I want to close with this, getting back to really the core of our conversation today. And that is, women are destined to succeed. You are already successful, but you have to be willing to beat the odds. And certainly all 3 of you did. You did it not just in a way where you acquired your degrees and so forth, you're working in your professions, but you did it emotionally. You did it spiritually. I think all 3 of you can testify to the women who are listening all over the world that what kept you, as Mila said, your audience is God. What kept you was God. God kept you, because I am quite sure if you all was locked up in a room with a couple of girls and you start telling them the stuff you had to go through to get to where you are today, they'll be totally shocked. So I just believe women in general need to understand that you have an incredible amount of power on the inside of you. And you should never, I think one of the speakers said it earlier on, you should never hang your future on the participation of someone else. In other words, as a woman, well, I can only achieve those things when I get a man in my life. Never do that, because sometimes getting a man in your life is the headache. Sometimes. I'm not saying all the time, but if you are destined to be great, if God's anointing is on you, ladies, you can get your degree, you can purchase your house, you can open your business, you can do a lot of stuff without a man. And can I just be honest? I don't know if these ladies would agree with me. You don't have to be married and you don't have to have a man to be successful. And it's okay if you don't get married. Is that right, ladies?
Absolutely.
Yes, it's right.
It's okay, right, Dr. Thompson? I mean,
yeah.
Talk to these ladies. Just take 2 minutes and do it. Isn't it okay if they don't get married, don't have a boyfriend?
Absolutely. I mean, the reality is, yes, I have a PhD in marriage and family therapy. So obviously, I love the idea of relationships and what they bring to our lives. But the reality is that it's, relationships go beyond just a romantic relationship. It's about creating a belief in yourself that you can be successful. As Minister Sean said earlier, it's about setting goals for yourself and knowing that other things will fall into place. Like, I am someone that, yes, I am married now, but I was not married when I was getting any of my degrees, when I was working in different fields. Like, I had this vision in mind of, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep pushing, that even with all these obstacles that I've experienced, trying to get my doctorate, trying to work and manage a mortgage at the same time, all of these different things, I continue to focus and I continue to rely on God. And it's so funny that while I was in my doctorate program in marriage and family therapy, I did have moments where I was like, dang, like, God, where is my Boaz? Like, where is my partner?
Where is he? Where's Boaz?
Yeah, like where is he? Like, I've seen some non-Boazes, but I would love to have my Boaz right now. But I had to get out of that mindset. I really had to say, you know what? I'm just going to focus on this, and what God has for me, He has for me. I still maintain that hope. And I went through all of these amazing accomplishments. Again, I've been very, very blessed when it came to different opportunities. And it was a month and a half after I got my PhD and got an offer to be a professor that my Boaz found me. And, it might not have been, when I thought, there might have been circumstances that I didn't expect, but it happened. Wow. And so again, I didn't need that in order to have all of these accomplishments. Now I have the bonus. Now, as I'm doing these different things, I have my husband, who is an amazing support and does build me up. I have my stepchildren, who again are a bonus in my life. But I didn't have to have any of those to be successful. None of us have to have those things that society tells us we have to have in order to be successful. You said what makes you successful in your life. And ultimately, it's what God has for us.
This is so good. They're telling me time is up. We got to cut this. It was an awesome discussion. Thank you so much, Sean Sanders. Thank you, Mila Risen. Did I get that right, Mila? Risen?
It's okay. Yes, you did, Mila Risen. You got it.
Okay, and Dr. Heather Thompson, you three were amazing. And I can just imagine the comments people are leaving. Ladies, I want to leave you with this. You are strong. You are built for this. You are very special to God. And that's the reason why God had these three ladies to speak into your life today. Don't take their words lightly. Please make sure you share this platform with someone else. Thank you so much for listening or watching. I'll see you next time on the next podcast.